Good day, everyone. Jim Laird joining you live from Grand Pacifica, Nicaragua. I actually got my Nika barbell swag, got some of it in the mail. Finally got here. It takes usually about a week or two to get things forwarded from the US. So not too bad. Depends on whether you send it by boats, about 3 weeks, planes about a week. And then by the time you either got to go pick it up in a Managua or have it delivered out here, that's just kind of part of the cost of being here. I got actually a fun topic today. I'm actually working on getting a little bit better internet connection. It's very difficult for me to get internet upstairs for whatever reason. I have to like flip the Ethernet cable out the window and up, but I'm working on a different solution for that. The internet here hasn't been as good as was promised. So we're working on some other solutions for that. So I'm working on making my upstairs like an office and then getting a good solid Ethernet connection up there so I can be more consistent with these things. Because a lot of times I haven't been as consistent lately because a lot of times the internet just is not as reliable as I'd like it to be. So we're working on that. We've got some solutions that we're working on. So, because I definitely plan on being here over the long haul. So improving the internet here is definitely something that I have to do if I want to continue to live here and make a living. So we're working on that. Actually, there's a video on my YouTube channel called Louie Simmons Coaching. It gets a ton of views. It's Louie Simmons coaching sumo RDL video, stuff like a deadlift. And I had somebody reach out to me and was like, wow, like that's a really cool video. It's from years and years ago. It's like the mid 2000s, I think. And it's a girl named Molly Galbraith who used to be my business partner who now runs a thing called Girls Gone Strong. And Louie was coaching her along. And then another friend of mine, Sarah Martin, who's a PT in Lexington, Kentucky. And, it was a number of years ago. And he was like, man, tell me about your time, with Louie Simmons and what you learned from Louie Simmons. And, I was very lucky early in my career. I don't get to talk about power. I mean, I could talk about powerlifting more, but I don't get to talk about it much because I really didn't cater to powerlifters. Most powerlifters are broke. I kind of hacked the system, so to speak. I convinced really attractive women to like fall in love with powerlifting because it would basically give them more of the body type that they wanted, like a more athletic type body type. Lifting weights does incredible things for helping women kind of shrink, so to speak, and tone up in certain areas, particularly the glutes and the hamstrings. So powerlifting is very good for that. So I convinced a bunch of women that never lifted weights before that they should get into powerlifting. And so we would do like 2 meets a year and we would compete in powerlifting for fun. And they really enjoyed that. And that was my big, but it wasn't like ultra serious. It was more for fun. And, these women wanted to feel good and look good. And so I've had over 20 girls pull over 315 from the floor. So I had some really, a couple girls that were super, super strong, a couple girls that did nationals, or one girl in particular did nationals. But it was a lot of fun. But powerlifting wasn't really what I went after most. And what I do now with like Dr. Stillman is just helping people with lifestyle change, like helping people get healthier, helping people install healthy habits, helping people that, have autoimmune diseases and things like that, making sure they're using the right doses of exercise, make sure they're managing their stress. That's pretty much what I do. But I've worked with all levels of athlete, all different sports, but that's not my bread and butter, right? I can do it. It's just, that's not how I hung my hat, so to speak. But when I started, I met a guy named Jim Windler, who wrote a book called 531, probably the best beginner strength training program there is out there. Everybody needs a good solid dose of that in the beginning. Most people do, with a few exceptions, with maybe some overhead athletes and things like that would need some modification. But a great solid beginner program. And Jim really talks about doing a lot of athletic things like sprinting and throwing and things like that. I was I slept on Jim's floor for essentially almost a year in Lexington, Kentucky. He's the reason I moved to Lexington. I moved because he was there and I was helping him with a powerlifting meet. And I met him at University of Arizona. And so I came out and ended up sleeping on his floor, and I stayed in Lexington. Ended up starting my own business there. But and then Jim ended up doing Elite FTS and all that. But I met Louie through Jim, with going to the powerlifting meets and stuff. And I got to know Louie, and I started talking with him. I've trained at Westside a number of times. Got to train with guys like Chuck Vogelpool, JL Hallsworth, competed in the same meets as like guys like Donnie Thompson. So, I got to know a lot of really good, strong people. Mike Rogeria, Chuck Vogelpool helped me a ton with my deadlift. I'll talk about that sometime. But Louie, one of the big things I learned from Louie was just the undying passion to just help other people. Louie was incredibly, you'd call Louie on the phone, like Powerlifting USA. This is like back before the internet was huge. Louie used to write articles. He'd list a phone, and it was his phone number. And you would call, and he would talk to you for hours on the phone about Olympic lifting, about whatever it is. Louie had an opinion on it, right? And that was probably just. And I tried to do that myself. I try to help people as much as I can. Obviously, there's like a business. Like Louie was a really smart businessman too. People don't realize that. Like his patent of the reverse hyper, and then a lot of his deals that he worked out with Rogue and things like that. The guy was a really smart businessman. I always tried to buy equipment from him as well, because he was so generous with his time. But I had a great time every time I'd go up there. He'd always take us out to Cracker Barrel, or Bob Evans, and have breakfast. It was always a really good time. He was very generous with his time. And but the one thing was that passion, and then the other thing was the sled. I've used the sled. Jim actually got me into the sled first, and I used it with all my basketball players, my football players. We would reduce their running volume. We would basically increase the quality of the running, but lower the volume, and then we'd replace that volume with sled work. We'd do sled work every day, sometimes light, sometimes heavier. And we would do that sled work. And my guys would always go into camp in really good shape, but they weren't beat up. We did enough running so that they were really good at running. But with a lot of the programs, there's just so much volume, and then they don't really have anywhere to go once they get to camp. And my guys would go in, they'd ace all the conditioning tests, and they weren't beat up, they weren't exhausted because they've been doing so much dragging the sled and pushing prowlers and things like that. And then by the end of the year, they'd be still doing, like they wouldn't be as beat up as some of the other kids. So the sled was a huge part. I still love, using the sled, dragging the sled. I need to rig something up down here. But when I work with athletes, especially on their days off, that light sled dragging is a really good way to speed up recovery, build work capacity. Louie always used to talk about work capacity. Louie was a big believer in feeder workouts, doing multiple workouts a day, constantly doing something. Louie really liked the concept of bringing up weak areas. That's when you look at the sumo deadlift, RDL. Personally, I wouldn't coach it with the head back. I've learned a few things since then, but the idea of taking lighter or taking a movement that's harder than the actual main lift and getting strong at that, Louie was classic for that, doing good mornings or doing whatever else to bring up weak areas to make the compound lifts go up, like really improving tricep strength or doing accessory work to improve the main lifts. That was something that I learned from Louie as well. And then kind of having specific exercises that you add because of where you get stuck in the bench press or the squat or the deadlift. And then also the concept of not having to deadlift super heavy all the time. My arms are really short. I have a tall torso. So deadlifting heavy occasionally from time to time is in my best interest. as opposed to deadlifting. That just beats the living crap out of me. So understanding you don't necessarily have to deadlift to get better at deadlifting. Although I will say Chuck Vogelpool showed me most people don't know how to load the bar properly on the deadlift. They don't know how to pull their body down through the floor. And I'll go over that sometime, but creating that tension on the bar and actually pulling yourself through the ground and creating that leverage is huge. I left hundreds of pounds on the platform, and Chuck was nice enough to come over one day and talk to me about that. But I had a lot of fun training at Westside. I still message Louie's wife Doris. Louie's passed away here in the last year or two, maybe 2 years ago. I message her from time to time and check up on her. She was always very nice to me. All my friends when we came to the powerlifting meets. So Louie, his passion was just infectious, and he was a really fun guy. I loved watching him interact with different people because his approach would change. And I've always tried to do that too. Like if you watch me coach a Navy SEAL or a high level wrestler, it's going to be totally different language, totally different attitude than if I'm working with a 12-year-old girl. You know, Louie would work with a lot of young kids, have them do different jumps and stuff. I watched people would bring their kids in, and Louie just had a really good time with him. And he just adapted to who he was working with. And then he'd have somebody come in that was a power lifter, and he'd be like, you're weakish, whatever curse word you're going to throw in there. Yeah, your hamstrings are weak. I need more hamstring work, and he'd be very harsh. But then with kids, he'd be a lot of fun, and he'd totally change up like who he was. So it was a really interesting thing. And I tried to take, I've watched a lot of great coaches that could change their coaching style to who they're working with. And, Lee Taft is a really good example of that as well. Incredible. He was a teacher, and I'm originally an elementary school teacher. And so you have to be able to adapt your teaching style to your students to get your message across. So there's just a few of my thoughts. You can check that video out. I think I put a link in the description. You can go check it out. It's an old video. It's from like probably 2009 or something, maybe 2010. I mean, it's way back there. But it was a Westside Barbell in Columbus. We were there for a meet. We were watching a meet, and we all came up there, and it was a lot of fun. Had a good time, and those will always be really good memories. But dragging the sled, the importance of GPP. I think also the importance of throwing in jumps and throws and things like that too. Louie got a lot of his information from Charlie Francis, and Charlie Francis was really big on jumps and throws, and then also general physical preparedness. A lot of the medicine ball circuits and things like that came from Charlie Francis, who also is somebody who I really admired and looked up to, and I actually shared one of his videos the other day on my Instagram. So I'm very lucky that I've had a very wide, the list of mentors I've had is incredible. I'm really blessed that if one day I'll sit down and I'll list off everyone who I consider having a major influence on my strength and conditioning career. It is a pretty impressive list, and it would be so much fun to get all those people. Well, it would be fun. There'd be some arguments, but it'd be fun to get all those people in a room. But I'm very lucky to have a lot of great people that have influenced me and have helped me to just be a better coach and a better teacher. So make sure you get outside this week on Thursday. We've got our weekly lesson with Dr. Stillman. He's back in the groove. He's coming to the end of his honeymoon here, a well-deserved break. So the topic for this week is, I should have checked before. I know it's something to do with, where is it? Where is it? April. But I'm looking forward to getting my office upstairs set up. And I'm looking forward to getting a better groove with this stuff, because since I've been down here, it's kind of been hit and miss. I apologize for that. So light sauna and phototherapy, and then next week's going to be diet, nutrition, and supplements. So there you go. Go over to nikabarbell.com. This is Nika Barbell Grand Pacifica shirt that says, "Don't be a zoo animal" on the back. So help spread the word that you need to get outside. And you need to not be an indoor creature. So take care. Make sure you take some time to get outside. And thanks for watching.